I'm live. I'm live. It is Thursday the 16th of March 2023 and I am reading out Scarlet Feather. It is a book by Joan Grant, a far memory book. Her own life, thousands and thousands of years ago. It is the story of Piyannah and her cousin Raki, and they want to be the innovators, a new tribe which is combining male and female. Piyannah's mother dies and the children must integrate into the rest of the tribe. It's the tribe of the two trees. And to become joint chief of the new tribe, however, Raki must live the life of a young squaw and Piyannah must pass all the tests of a young brave. Now, they have already done a lot of their tests, but now they are 17 and they have been at the gathering of the tribes, 30 tribes, and it has been decided that Piyannah has to earn the Scarlet Feather. So, we are now at the challenge. The challenge is where the river leaves the place of the gathering, it flows underground through caverns which are said to be haunted by demons of great malice. Little is known of these caverns or of the tunnels by which they are joined, for very few have lived to describe them. I repeat, the ordeal of the caverns of darkness is severe, but not impossible. Do you wish to accept our decision? And they both accepted the decision. The caverns. 22nd reading. I was glad that Raki had left at dawn to wait for me beyond the caverns of darkness, for if he had been there to watch me enter, the canoe might have taken me to the other side of the water. The sight of him would have drained away the last of that pride which would not let me refuse the ordeal. Even Nakachik had tried to persuade me not to attempt it, telling me that the other chiefs had proposed it only because they thought both Cha and I would refuse and so lose our chance of joining the Feathered Council. Cha was surrounded by people of his own tribe. His voice was loud and arrogant, but I knew the sweat on his forehead was born of fear. I stood with Dorok and Gorky while Takini held the prow of my canoe. I saw his lips moving and knew he was telling it to guard me. People from every tribe had collected to see us start. Even the chiefs were there. I knew very few would be with Raki, for most of them believed that we would never be seen again after we entered the tunnel that led into the cliff. I know there's a way through, said Dorok again. I once spoke to a man who gained his scarlet through this ordeal, though if I had known this was going to happen, I should have listened more carefully to what he said. It was 7 years ago, but I think I have remembered all the essentials. You will go through underground caverns where the water spreads into lakes, so you will have a chance to choose your way if you keep out of the main stream. There are places where the roof nearly touches the water. Lie flat in the bottom of the canoe and guard your head with a paddle. Above all things, do not let your torch go out, for without light you can only let yourself be swept along by the current. You will get through, Piyannah, because the others who failed believed in demons. Remember, there are no demons, and you are not afraid of bats or echoes. Echoes cannot hurt. They cannot hurt you even if they sound like an enemy. When you see bright water ahead and come into the open, keep close to the south bank, where there's a clear run down the rapid. The rapid is easy. You and Raki have often gone down more difficult ones as a game. Remember, the bright water is beyond the cave of the whirlpool. Until I heard the desperate conviction in his voice, I had not realized he expected me to be killed. Did he think I ought to give him a last message to Raki? I could not think of one, for I had to conceal my fear. That was growing stronger every moment, conceal it even from myself. Lots were drawn to decide whether Cha or I was to go first. It fell to him. He pulled off his tunic and, wearing only a breechclout, got into his canoe. As it slid away from the bank, his tribe shouted encouragement. The shout being taken up by a few of the rest of the crowd, which thronged on both sides of the river. I watched his canoe gradually gathering speed. It looked as though it was sure to crash against the low entrance to the tunnel. He paddled across the current to the scene of the river, to the center of the river, and I saw him making for a point where the entrance was little higher than the rest. He ducked his head. A sigh went up from the crowd as the canoe swept out of sight. "You see, it's easier than it looks," said Dorok. "There's plenty of clearance. Through from here, it looks as though even a floating lock would scrape against the roof. Hold the torch high as soon as you are in the tunnel. Even if the light is dim, it will help you to know where to duck." I walked down to where Tikini was holding the canoe. He looked up and said, "Everything is ready. I have put a knife, a rope, a spare torch, and one that is smouldering, and some strips of bandage in case you cut yourself on a sharp rock. Loss of blood will weaken you, so tie it tightly if you have the chance." "I hope you have put a double handful of courage in as well," I said, and managed a laugh, which I think sounded convincing. I turned to Dorok. "Tell the tribe to prepare a feast tonight to celebrate our victory over the Yellowskins, and I shall be there to share it with you. But under my breath, I added, I shall be there, even though you cannot see me." Would the spirit of Piyannah be welcomed at the feast, or would even the braves be afraid of her and shiver when she walked past them? "The great hunters are with you," said Tikini in a low voice. "Tell Raki," I said. I pulled off my tunic, and then, "No, I will tell him myself this evening." I felt the current draw the canoe away from Tikini. A great shout went up from the tribe of Two Trees, and it was joined by the voices of hundreds and tens of hundreds. Strength flowed into me with a sound. Tens of hundreds of squaws had died of hunger. Lost my place there. Of hunger, of childbearing, in sickness and in loneliness, died without acclamation. Their courage had never been acknowledged. But because Piyannah took a canoe into the darkness, the 30 tribes would remember the bravery of squaws. I paddled across the current as Char had gone, and reached midstream in time to choose the place where I would enter the face of the cliff. I made sure that the torch was smouldering, and that a second paddle was securely fastened to the side of the canoe, for if the one I held was wrestled from me, I should be helpless unless I had another to steer by. The water was roaring as though it were angry at being made to enter the narrow gateway ahead. I saw 2 small whirlpools and shot between them, knowing that had either caught me, I would have been smashed against the rocks which guarded the entrance. The tunnel seemed to open like the mouth of a huge black fish. I ducked, holding the paddle over my head. My fingers were grazed by the rock above me, but lightly, so I knew they would only just have touched it. The canoe suddenly swung around and nearly capsized. I had to risk hitting my head and kneel upright before I could bear with sufficient strength on the paddle to steady the canoe. When it was going smoothly forward, I grasped the torch in my left hand and wheeled it above my head. For a terrible moment, I thought it had gone out, but I saw a few faint sparks and a thin plume of flame streamed against the dark. The roof was much higher than I expected, and walls of rock rose sheer out of the water. They seemed to be dry, for there was no gleam of moisture. The water was unbroken, and it was easy to keep a level course. I had begun to feel more confident. Then I saw the walls were drawing closer together as the canoe began to gather speed. I knew there must be a rapid ahead of me. The river was rushing towards the cleft, like water gushing from a narrow neck of jar. I could not hold the torch and go on paddling. If there were rocks amongst the rapids, I should never see them in time. It would be impossible to steer at such speed, even in broad daylight. I must hold up the torch until the last moment, to see as much as I can. I must tense every muscle to keep the canoe from turning over. In this black water, no swimmer would have a chance. The canoe leapt forward I flung down the torch. Strained against the paddle to keep the canoe pointing with the current. If the brow swung around even very little, it must surely be swamped. The roar of water was louder than 1,000 demons. It would be easy to believe in demons in this darkness if there was time to think of anything except the press of danger. The water buffeted the canoe until the breath was nearly driven out of my body. I gasped and got a mouthful of spray that nearly choked me. I waited to feel the canoe twist beyond my control as it was clutched in a vortex. Just as the strain on my arms became unendurable, the canoe began to slacken speed, and remembering what Torok had told me, I managed to drive it out of the main flow of the current. I expected at any moment to feel it jar against the rock wall. There was no jar, and in several strokes I came into a still water, or water where the current was almost imperceptible. I'll stop this chapter here. It's an exciting journey, and I continue later. Part 1. Good night.